Hello, crypto world. Welcome to the Chart Historian. My name is Justin, and I will be your host. So today I'm looking at the XRP chart, and what I'd like to discuss is this final phase that we are in. So XRP has been in a decline, and it is my belief we are near the end of this decline. However, there is going to be another push down before we actually reach that capitulation point. To show what I'm talking about, I'm going to go to the very first time XRP ever did a decline. So here is the first decline that ever took place on XRP after a peak, a bull run was made. So this is in 2013. A peak was made here, after which it crashed and retraced, and through a series of smaller declining peaks came to the capitulation point, at which point price went back up and a new phase in XRP started. Now, this is important going back to the original because this is, or the first time it took place, because it is the original blueprint of which all other declines in XRP are actually copies of this pattern right here. So you will see this pattern repeat. Now, every time it repeats, it's an original expression of it, but that DNA, that structural similarity, is in each of the declines that take place after this point. Now, if you just a brief overview of this decline. So price came to a peak, came crashing down. This first one was A. Sometimes A is not there. It came crashing down, came up to a B. If you notice, let's zoom in on B. B it's flat, and then it does a peak. Some of them will be flat in the future after this one. Some of them will be flat in a peak like this. C has two waves up, one here, the other one here. You'll see that repeated in corrections that precede this or come after this one, after which it declines. D pulls up right here, does this bull thing, then declines. You'll also see that repeated. E starts with going it back up, and then it does a bull, in which it drops into F. You'll see this repeated again. F is, let me zoom in on F so you can get a better picture. So F has a peak, pulls back up, and winds its way down to a point here, and it does a little pull up right here, a little push back up, after which it does another peak, and then it does this swoop down to its capitulation point. So it is my belief we are actually beginning this swoop down to this capitulation point. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure the decline from here, from the peak down to the bottom of this peak, because that has already been completed on the current chart. And then I'm going to measure from the bottom of this peak down to the capitulation point, so we can get an idea of how much more of a percentage drop we should expect, historically speaking. So here are those percentages declines. So this first one from the peak down to the trough of this peak right here was a 26.74% decline. From the bottom of this peak down to the capitulation point, it was an additional 28.13% decline. So the second decline, this swoop down right here, was greater than the first decline. So, and the difference between the two, between 26.74 and 28.13, is 1.39%. So this lower one was 1.39% larger than the upper one. All right, well, let's continue to move through history. Okay, so here we are in 2014, and this decline was the second decline that XRP had. And as you can see, right here we have that flat top. Remember, I told you some will be flat, some will be flattened with a peak, after which it declined. Here's the two waves that C did, after which it declined. It goes back up, creates a bull on D, then it declines. E starts with it moving back up, does a bull, and then it declines. So all this is being echoed from the original one that took place. F pulls up, moves down. There's that little push up that it did, that push back up. It's kind of small. Let's zoom in a bit. After which it comes down, makes that peak, and then that swoop down to the capitulation point. So from the top of this peak down to the bottom of this trough of this peak was a 17.95% decline. From the bottom of this peak down to the capitulation point was a 24.88% decline. So again, the second decline was a larger decline than the first one. The difference between the top one and the bottom one is a 6.93% decline. So that's quite a bit larger. So this second one was 6.93% larger of a decline than the top one. Let's move on and see what else we can learn from history. Okay, so this was a very brief correction that took place. This took place in 2017, in May 2017. And as you can see, there's no A here. There was also no A in the previous one. Let me go back here. You can see that there was no A here. So back here on 2017, May 2017, price went up, came crashing back down, and this took place on a very short time frame, so it's hard to actually see some of these characteristics of these declining fractals. But if you go over to CoinTrader Pro, you can see I have it on an hour time frame. CoinTrader Pro allows me to look at historical data on a much smaller time frame. So you can see that there was no A, B came up, it did a peak, and then it declined. Remember, the original one did a peak and went flat. So actually this one does a peak and goes flat, and then it drops. So it's in keeping with the original one. C has two waves up. This is more like two peaks. This first one actually exceeded the second one, but it has the two waves, after which it declines. D goes up, does the bull, declines. E goes back up, does the bull, and then declines. And then F. F is just so original. And I think it's important to examine these original things, because a lot of times they can be the precedent for future anomalies that may occur within the chart. So F pulls up, does its decline. That's the first little push back up that we see in the decline. Here is that peak after this decline, and then I believe this is that swoop down to the capitulation point. It was a very small decline here. So from this peak down to this trough here on the first peak right here was a 12.66% decline. This one from the trough of that peak right here to the capitulation point was only a 2.49% decline. Very, very, very small. Let's move along and see what else history has to show us. All right, so here we are. This decline took place in 2018. This is right now the current all-time high of XRP. So as you can see, it declined all the way to F. Now this, even though it's a very large decline, some of this actually took place very quick, and you can't quite see it on a daily time frame. But if you go over to CoinTrader Pro, you can see it on an hour candle, and you can see that A comes up, does a decline, B goes up, kind of does the flat thing, declines. C has the two waves right here, and then it declines. D goes back up, does a bull, and declines. And if we go back to the larger time frame here on with a daily candle, you can see that D, the bull, you can see E that does a bull, and then F. In a previous video, I had F starting here, but after a deep dive into this particular fractal, I came to the realization that F actually starts here. And it still is in keeping with the original, where it has the peak and then the push up, and then the other little peak, and then the swoop down. In fact, if you go to the second time this fractal occurred, it's even more similar. This is more on a vertical axis, if you will. So it has the peak, that little push up, the other peak, and then the swoop down. And as you can see, that it does jive with this one. Let me zoom in a little more. So you have the peak, that little push up, there's the peak, and then the swoop down. This is an interesting little addition two that swoop down, we may actually see something like this in the process forming right now in the current chart. So let's keep an eye on it. So on this one, the decline from the peak of that pullback up on F down to the trough of that peak at the bottom was a 38.66% decline. The second part of the decline from the bottom of the trough of that peak down to the capitulation point, which is here, it actually does a bounce. This swoop down is split. So it swoops down and capitulates before moving back up, but it has this drop in it. We may see that actually play out too in the future. So from the trough of that peak right here down to the capitulation point was a 40.51% decline. So the second one, again, was larger. The second one was larger by a 1.85% difference. So this one, the second one was larger by 1.85%. Not very big of a percent, but it was still bigger. Let's move along and see what else we can learn. Actually, where we are next is where we are today. And let's put on some fractal analysis. Price came up, did a peak, came crashing back down. Here's A. This one has an A. A comes crashing back down. B goes up, kind of does a flat thing. It actually does have a little peak there, comes crashing back down. C has the two waves going up and then comes crashing back down. D goes up, does a bull right here. Sorry, it goes up, does a bull, comes crashing back down. E goes up, does a bull, comes crashing back down to pattern F. And here we are. If you measure from the part where F pulls back up at the very beginning down to the trough of this peak right here, it is a 33.84% decline. We don't know what the second one is, but right here what I did is I took the maximum decline, historically speaking, that took place, or the maximum difference between these two ones, which was a 6.93% that took place back here. That was the largest one. So I'm applying it to here. So if you add 33.84 plus 6.93%, you get 40.77%. Now, I wasn't able to actually pinpoint 40.87% with this percentage thing right here, so I got as close as I could, and that is 40.87%. But that roughly puts it in the 18-cent category. Now, this is based off of history. So historically speaking, the largest percent difference between these two declines was 6.93%. Now, it could be more, it could be less, but historically speaking, on the higher end, we could expect XRP to drop into the teens, 18, maybe it could be 17 cents, maybe it could be 16 cents, it could be higher, it could be 20 cents, we don't know. But from a historical point of view, the largest decline would put it potentially in the 18-cent range. So after this, it will capitulate, it'll come to a capitulation point, and then it will move up, and it will begin a new phase, and that phase will be a sideways, range-bound time that eventually leads into the next bull run. Well, I hope this was helpful. If you found it helpful, it'd be much appreciated if you hit that thumbs up. You can also hit that subscribe button. You'll be updated with whenever I put out new content. I put out content on a regular basis. I'm a new channel, so any likes or subscribes really means a lot to me. I'm also not a financial advisor, so nothing I present here should be construed as investment or financial advice. You can follow me on Twitter at Chart Historian. I also do regular updates there. I'm so glad you caught this video. I hope you catch my next one. Have a great day, and bye for now.